Trade deadline day is here, but what will the Islanders ultimately do and how it will affect the future of the franchise? We've got all that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, the day is here. It's trade deadline day. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers. So glad you could join us here to talk a little Islanders hockey. It's trade deadline day. We're going to talk about the rumors, the latest rumors, plus we'll talk a little bit about what happens if the Islanders do indeed trade away Brock Nelson and or Kyle Palmieri. And we'll preview both of this weekend's games in California. We got to start with the trade deadline. And the latest rumors are kind of interesting because they're contradictory. And you know what? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that that is exactly the way Lou Lamoriello wants it to be. There have been reports that Lou Lamoriello is still trying to extend Brock Nelson and or Kyle Palmieri. Keep them in the fold and have them be New York Islanders beyond this season. But there are also reports that he's not getting anywhere in these negotiations, or I should rephrase, they're not close to signing a new contract. So what happens next becomes the big question. And, you know, if you're not going to be able to sign them, then Lou has 2 options. The 2 options are either you trade them, and boy, isn't that what they need to do because it is a seller's market right now, or he holds on to them and basically says to himself, hey, we got a chance to make the playoffs and we're going to stick it out with these guys. I'll keep negotiating and take the chance of losing them for nothing. And look, the longer this goes on, the fact that they're not signing a new contract, the more likely it is that a trade has to be made. And I feel that Lou Lamoriello prefers to keep these guys, but if the length of the deal and the money are not there, and I don't see how they can be, because both of these players will get more money and more years if they sign elsewhere as free agents. So to me, if I'm Brock Nelson or Kyle Palmieri, the only way I stay is if I give a hometown discount in a situation where this may be my last chance at big money in the NHL. And that's a value judgment that these players have to make. What is it worth to keep your family in your home and to stay where you are and to keep your kids in their school, et cetera, et cetera? You know, how many millions of dollars in the long run is it worth to them? Some people may say, yeah, it's worth a few million less if I can have the life I like and be where I want to be and be with the teammates I know and love. Great. Other people say, hey, this is my last chance to make money as a hockey player. Big money. I am not necessarily going to be in this position to make multi-million-dollar a year contracts after my playing career is over, maybe, just maybe, I need to move on. So that is sort of the place that we find ourselves in. Negotiations are continuing, both to try to extend Brock and Palms, and there are discussions already to trade. It is not definite that the Islanders are going to follow any of the three possible paths. So we have to see. But the one thing I do know as I record this episode, the return the Islanders could get trading Brock Nelson and or Kyle Palmieri is one of those things where it's just too good to pass up. And, sometimes your first idea is you don't want to make this deal. And then somebody comes along and makes you an offer that is so good, you'd be foolish not to take it. And I get the feeling that if a trade or trades are made, that is realistically what is going to happen to the New York Islanders and Lou Lamoriello. And, right now, The Athletic came up with their trade target board 9.0. And Brock Nelson moved down a notch from number 1 to number 2 because Mikko Rantanen passed him, because it looks like the Carolina Hurricanes are not going to be able to sign Rantanen to a new extension before the deadline. But even so, Brock Nelson, number 2 on this list, and Kyle Palmieri has moved up to 8th. So the Islanders have 2 of the top 8 available targets at the trade deadline for a team that is still only about an 19%, has an 18 or 19% chance of making the playoffs. It just does not make logical sense not to make some kind of deal. That being said, Lou Lamoriello has his own way of looking at things, and we'll see what he ends up ultimately doing between now and the trade deadline. Look, everybody out there, everydayers, understand where I'm coming from. The value of these players will never be higher. These players are in a position to be moved. They are older. If you re-sign them, you're only going to get diminishing returns over the length of the deal. If you sign, for example, Brock Nelson or Kyle Palmieri to a 4-year deal, years 3 and 4 of the contract, you're probably not getting the same kind of production from them that you get in year 1 and 2, and you're not going to get a discount for that, okay? But you want this team to get younger, faster, and more skilled. These are your weapons. And again, asset management. When you are dealing with the salary cap, so much of this is about asset management. And right now, the New York Islanders have not done a very good job under Lou Lamoriello of maximizing asset management. There was an offer for Kyle Palmieri, allegedly, 2 years ago, a first-round pick. Lou did not do it. There have been other, offers. The fact that you could get for Brock Nelson something roughly equivalent to what the Islanders gave up to acquire Bo Horvat, which was a first-round pick, a middle six player, and the top prospect in the Islanders farm system. You can get a deal like that. Even if you have to retain a little bit of salary, do it. And you know what? You could always, theoretically, trade these two players, and if you really want to, you could re-sign them over the summer. Doesn't happen often. In fact, very rarely, but it is possible. And again, the Islanders would have to pass 5 teams as of right now to get into the playoffs. You got the Flyers, who are right behind them by 1 point. It is not an easy task. And if they do indeed make the playoffs, you're looking at playing Washington, Toronto, or Florida in that first round, depending on if the Islanders are the first wild card or the second wild card. The odds of them winning any series are not great. So here we are at deadline day, and we don't know right now what Lou Lamoriello is going to do, and that's exactly the way Lou likes it. He says next to nothing. All of the rumors that we hear are coming from other sources, and, you know, he's keeping all his options open. I just hope, you know, Lou Lamoriello's expression, one of the cliches he likes to use is, if you have time, use it, but don't misjudge how much time you have left. Because other teams are making moves that take them out of the sweepstakes for Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. And if that is indeed the case, like the Tampa Bay Lightning made a move already, that's going to take them out of those sweepstakes. If that's the case and you wait too long, you may not get what you expected in this deal. So you got to hope that Lou Lamoriello makes his decision in time, finds that sweet spot, and hopefully makes the trades that this team needs to retool. Will it happen with Lou? I believe it when I see it, but I will say that this day is going to be critical for the New York Islanders. And I will say, we are looking to have a bonus episode after the trade deadline passes, so look for it Friday, late afternoon, early evening, and hopefully we'll have, you know, the latest on whatever moves the Islanders do or do not make. So make sure you join us for that. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll update you on what's going on. Got a lot more to get to on today's show. If we trade Brock Nelson and or Kyle Palmieri, who's going to have to step up? Plus, the Islanders have 2 games this weekend. We'll preview them both. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a player who was with the Islanders in their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th seasons, and 5th. Let's see if you can guess who this late Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island forward was. And he later coached the Islanders as an assistant as well. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you could place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you could stay in the action, and if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If the New York Islanders actually do trade Brock Nelson and or Kyle Palmieri, and look, deals could include other players, whether it's to sweeten the pot, salary retention, draft picks. There's a whole lot of variables involved in any one of these trades. But I think there are 2 players in particular on the current roster that are going to have to step up and pick up a little bit of the slack if these 2 guys depart. And look, there have been so many different rumors. You know, we mentioned in the first segment that we're looking at something similar to the Bo Horvat deal. So what was the Bo Horvat deal, right? So it was a first-round pick, a middle 6 player, and the top prospect in the Islanders organization. So that middle six player, whoever it is, could certainly be one of the factors, one of the players who need to pick up some of the slack. And, some of the rumors I've seen included maybe Max Domi or Robertson from Toronto if the Islanders make a deal with the Maple Leafs. And, if that indeed does happen, then those new players will be added to the list of guys who really need to step up their offensive game. Because let's face it, right now for the New York Islanders, Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri are tied for second place on the team in goals. So you have two of your top four goal scorers who are on expiring contracts and rumored to be possibly heading out the door. That's not nothing. That's a lot to lose on a team that is already 28th in the league in goals scored and is also missing Matthew Barzal, their most dynamic offensive playmaker. So you got to keep all of this in mind. But two guys who I think would really have to step up are Simon Holmstrom, who would probably be the guy to replace Kyle Palmieri, and Maxim Tsyplakov, who would probably step up to try to just get some of the production that you lose from Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. And they're in different spots right now. Holmstrom has 14 goals. He actually has an outside shot, if he finishes strong, to get to 20 goals this year. Tsyplakov only has 7. And he has been slumping lately. Bunch of guys have been struggling a little bit lately. But Tsyplakov is at or near the top of that list. And, he'd get obviously more ice time if Brock and or Kyle Palmieri are moved. But, he's on pace for maybe 10 goals, 11 goals for the year. And, they need him to be more than that. Now, he has the potential. And everydayers may remember, before the season started, I was hoping for 15 goals from Tsyplakov. Doesn't look like he's going to get there. But get me to a dozen. Get me to a dozen in the last 21 games. Give me 5 more goals. I don't think that's too much to ask for. He definitely has the ability. The question is whether or not he's going to actually reach the goal. So those are two guys who I think more than anybody else would have to step up. I would love to also see more from Anthony Duclair, but I still don't think he's healthy. And I'll say this, if the Islanders do fall out of the playoff race at some point, I would be in favor of possibly shutting down Anthony Duclair and letting him start to heal so that he comes back 100% healthy next year. And what else would that do? You could stash him on LTIR to add cap space. If you want to make a big deal at the deadline, that's one possibility. Or it allows you to bring up guys, whether, if you get that prospect in a trade, someone who was maybe in the AHL for a contending team, and all of a sudden becomes available and you want to add them to the Islanders rather than to Bridgeport. Bring them up, let them get the ice time. It is a whole different ball game if you're not all in to make the playoffs down the stretch. And I think, again, that Islander fans, I think they would have a high tolerance for this team not necessarily winning a lot of games down the stretch, but if they do make moves to be younger, faster, and stronger, acquire some prospects and guys who give this team hope for the future, I think this fan base just wants to see hope. And bringing back the same cast of characters as they age and as they do not get beyond just making the playoffs and losing in the first round or not making the playoffs barely. The longer you stay stuck in the muddy middle with the same crew, you like the players, but you don't like the outlook. And so there's less hope. And so there's less interest. And I think apathy. And every day, as you heard it on yesterday's show, when I read some mailbag emails that I got from listeners and viewers. And I've seen it on social media, and I've seen it in the chat room at, midnight Eastern time, Monday through Friday, or Sunday night through Thursday night. We're always talking about, the future of this franchise and where it's going to be. The fan base needs hope. And Islander fans are smart. They see the big picture. And I really think that if this team really did add picks and prospects and younger players at the deadline, even if they trade away two very popular and, two of the better offensive players on an offensive starved team, fans are smart and they're willing to take that one step back to take 2 or 3 steps forward. And that's really what needs to be done at the trade deadline. We'll see what Lou Lamoriello decides to do. And again, with Lou, I think anything is possible, and I believe it when I see it. All right, more to get to on today's show. We will preview both this weekend's games in California against San Jose and Anaheim. And we'll have our Islanders' birthday of the day. Did you guess who it is? Oh, one other clue. He also coached the Colorado Rockies of the NHL after his Islanders career was over. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So the Islanders have been off since Tuesday, but that break is coming to an end. They are back on the ice Saturday night in San Jose against the Sharks. That's a 10 o'clock Eastern time start, and it will be the first game since the trade deadline. So we don't know if there's going to be a Brock Nelson or a Kyle Palmieri or any new players. We have no idea how this roster is necessarily going to look. Who will still be here? Who will be gone? But the Sharks right now are still a struggling team. Now, they have won, 2 games in a row on the road against Toronto and Buffalo. They are playing Colorado on Thursday night in Colorado as they make their way back to the West Coast. But look, while they're playing a little better as of late, San Jose Sharks are 20 games under NHL 500 at 17, 37, and 9, 43 points in 63 games. But that doesn't mean there isn't young talent on this team. You've got guys like first overall pick Macklin Celebrini. You've got William Eklund. You've got Will Smith. These are players who their best years are ahead of them. And while the Sharks are struggling, I think Sharks fans have a lot to look forward to. So here are the line combinations for the Sharks. Alex Wenberg, William Eklund, and Tyler Toffoli make up the top line. And again, the Sharks could trade some of these guys at the deadline also. Macklin Celebrini, Fabian Zetterlund, and Will Smith are the second line. Barclay Goodrow, centers Colin Graff, and Nikolai Kovalenko on the third line, although Kovalenko is listed right now as kind of questionable for the game against the Avs. Ty Dellandrea centers Carl Grudstrom and Klim Kostin on the fourth line. Jake Wallman and Timothy Liljegren are the top defense pair. Mario Ferraro and Shakir Mukhamdullin are the second pair. And then Pickles, Mark-Edward Vlasic, the veteran, and Jack Thompson are the third pair. The goalies right now are Alexander Georgiev and Georgi Romanov, Logan Couture, Jan Ruta, and Henry Thrun are on IR. So we'll see what happens with them. But right now, look, you look at the numbers, you know why the Sharks are near the bottom of the league standings. 29th in goals scored, 31st in goals against, 25th on the power play, 24th on the penalty kill. As bad as they are, both the power play and the penalty kill are better than what the Islanders have done this season. But it is a winnable game. Again, 10 o'clock Eastern time start on Saturday night. Then on Sunday, the Islanders head south to play the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks will have one day off. They're playing against the Blues on Friday, and then they'll have Saturday off before facing the Islanders. That's a 9 o'clock Eastern time start on Sunday night. Keep in mind that our show for Sunday night / Monday morning, we will probably be a little bit late. We'll probably be up around 45 minutes to an hour after the end of the game. So if you're waiting on the premiere on YouTube, that's when it will be. The Ducks, well, they've surprised a lot of people. 27-27-7 on the year. Probably not making the playoffs, but they are ahead of schedule. And they also could be active at the deadline. They are right now 30th in goals scored, but 19th in goals against, 31st on the power play, 28th on the PK. John Gibson and Trevor Zegras, they have forever been mentioned in trade rumors. The line combinations for the Ducks, Ryan Strome, the ex-Islander, Frank Vetrano, and Troy Terry are the top line. Leo Carlson, Trevor Zegras, and Alex Killorn are the second trio. Mason McTavish centers the third line with Cutter Gauthier and Sam Colangelo. And then on the fourth line, it's Isaac Lundstrom, Jansen Harkins, and Brett Leeson. On defense, Jackson Lacombe and Radko Gudas are the top pair. Pavel Mintyukov and Jacob Trouba are the second pair. And Olin Zellweger and Drew Hellison are the third pair on defense. Gibson and Lucas Dostal are the goalies. Right now, Brock McGinn and Robbie Fabry are on IR. Gibson officially listed as day-to-day. These are two winnable games, although the Ducks may be a little bit better than most people think. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Islanders do, where they stand by the time they take the ice on Saturday night, as far as how some of the other teams have done. And we'll see what happens at the trade deadline for all three of these teams. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today is would have been the 82nd birthday, of former Islanders forward Bill McMillan. McMillan, 5'11", 172 pounds, was not drafted, made his NHL debut with Toronto in 70-71, and scored a career-high 22 goals and 41 points that year. Played one season for the Atlanta Flames in their first year in the league and joined the Islanders in 73-74. His best year on the island, 74-75, 13 goals, 25 points in 69 games. Played in 17 playoff games for the Islanders that year. Stayed on the island until the 76-77 season and then finished up his career with one of the Islanders' farm teams, the Fort Worth Texans, where they did win a championship in 77-78. He was the head coach for Fort Worth in 78-79, an assistant with the Islanders in their first cup-winning team, and then coached the Colorado Rockies in 80-81, and then the New Jersey Devils in 82-83 and 83-84. Obviously, the Devils were pretty bad back then, but he was their coach. October 28th, 1974 was one of his better games as an Islander. Islanders hosting the California Golden Seals at the Nassau Coliseum. It's Gary Simmons in goal for California and Billy Smith in goal for the Islanders. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Billy McMillan, scores late in the second period on the power play. The goalie, Gary Simmons, off for tripping, and McMillan gets a power play goal from the Potvin brothers, Jean and Dennis. And that ends up giving the Islanders a 6-1 lead. McMillan scores again early in the third period. Ralph Stewart, the assist. And then midway through the third period, Billy McMillan scores again. Ernie Hickey and Ralph Stewart, the assist. McMillan picks up an assist on a goal by Ernie Hickey 18 seconds after his goal. The Islanders absolutely crushed the Seals by a score of 10-1. For Billy McMillan, 3 goals, an assist. He was a +4. He had 4 shots on goal and scored on 3 of them. Bill McMillan is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 80 back in 2023, and he is missed. He was a real good part of the Islanders in the mid-70s, and as I mentioned, an assistant coach on their first Stanley Cup winning team. So I want to thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. I'm going to have all the latest news as it breaks on trade deadline day and all year long. And I'm also live tweeting during every Islanders home and road game, so join me for some instant insight and analysis. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the ride on trade deadline day. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.